And good afternoon. I'm Jim Inkster, your moderator, and we're here with Governor John Bel Edwards. This is the 30th program he has done monthly ever since April of 2016. So we're glad to have the governor in house. And if you'd like to talk with him, 877-217-5757 is your universal number, 877-217-5757. And the governor is just back from West Point, where he spent the weekend at his alma mater, and we mentioned the 30th show, and this was your 30th class reunion.
30th class reunion, and I'll tell you, when I was up there and I was 18, 19 years old, when I saw old grads, is what we called them, who had been out for 30 years, I thought they were ancient. So my definition of old has changed. I guess it's all relative. But had a wonderful time, and really a very large percentage of our class came back for the 30th reunion, people that I hadn't seen in 30 years, and it was a great weekend. And, of course, weather was wonderful. Army won. That game ended just in time for me to kind of take a peek at the LSU game, and LSU won with that big field goal at the end at Auburn, which was exciting. And of course, the Saints won on Sunday, and to kick it all off on Friday night, they meet High School Warriors won. And so it was about as good a weekend as I can have. And it was also the weekend of my 52nd birthday. And so it was just a tremendous opportunity for me to meet with my classmates, spend some time with Donna up there and so forth. It was great.
Now, I know these classes at West Point are about 1,000 people or close to it, right?
Well, you start off at a little over 1,000, and then you graduate. Well, you start off with about 1,200 or so, and you graduate 940, 950, something like that.
Okay. And in 30 years, that's a chance to have done a few things in your life, and I would imagine you're probably the only governor in your class, but some others have done other things. Were you recognized as one of the distinguished alums?
I was, and it was very surprising. So there are 24 general officers out of my class, and they're all wonderful people. I know them personally, and they're commanding the 82nd Airborne Division, the 101st Airborne Division, and so forth. And there was a briefing, and I was expecting the distinguished graduates just to show the general officers, but they actually did include me, and I didn't see it at first, and Donna had to point it out
so
to me.
So they had all these generals,
yeah,
and the governor.
Yeah, it was really neat. It was a great experience for us.
Well, you mentioned LSU. Since we last talked, you went to Dallas, right?
I did, and that was an exciting game. Of course, everybody knew we had one of the toughest schedules in the country for the year, but there was no team in the country that had a tougher schedule over the first 3 weeks, because we were taking on two top 10 teams, neither of which in Tiger Stadium. So the Miami game in Dallas was the first big test, and I was just, like every other Tiger fan, there and watching on TV, just extremely impressed with the way we dominated that game. And then to see it happen again on the road at Jordan-Hare Stadium against Auburn, a highly ranked Auburn, you know it's not a fluke. We have a great team with a lot of talent, and they're well coached. And so I'm as excited as anybody in the state about the LSU Tigers right now.
Have you been following the discussion about holistic admission standards?
I have, and I'm going to be getting a report from the Board of Regents soon, and I've had a number of conversations with our new Commissioner of Higher Education, Kim Hunter-Reid, and she's assured me that nothing in the LSU policy violates the directives coming out of Regents, which coordinates all of higher education for the state of Louisiana. And I know that there's a debate around that. And by the way, I think having debate is good. And at the end of the day, you got to get to the right place. And so there's going to be some more discussion about this. I know that there's going to be audits to look at. And by the way, this is something that Regents does every year, just to look at each of the institutions of higher education and compare the people who are admitted, the students who are admitted by grade point average or ACT and different things. The word coming out of LSU is that the grade point average requirements in the of the class, I should say, that was recently admitted, and the ACT are as high as they've ever been. So that sort of speaks for itself. But to have a good, healthy debate about what's going on and whether that's the way it should be, I think that's a good thing. But at the end of the day, we also have to have a resolution and closure on this issue and move forward. And I hope we can do that relatively soon.
The Revenue Estimating Conference, I think, meets tomorrow, and the early word is that the numbers will be positive.
It's going to be positive in terms of the surplus that was accrued over last year. So we closed the books on last fiscal year on June 30th, and you have to do all the accounting to account for all the revenue that came in during the year and then all the expenditures that went out. And obviously, you're either left with a surplus or a deficit. We know it's going to be a surplus, which is a good thing. And what that means is the economy performed better than the revenue estimating conference predicted, meaning that there were more jobs or people made more money and the corporations, for example, were more profitable and so forth. That certainly beats a deficit, because what you have to do with a deficit is you have to pay it first from this year's revenue, and that opens up a hole in this year, and then you have to follow that up with mid-year budget cuts. And so it's a really positive thing. The other thing that's positive about it is the law, the Constitution, only allows us to do several things with surplus dollars. You're going to put some of it into the rainy day fund. You're going to put some toward the pension system's liabilities. You're going to put you can put some towards other state debt, and then you can do capital construction. So those are the things that you can do with the revenue. We look forward to working with the legislature through that process to figure out what our priorities are moving forward. But these are really positive developments. You can only contrast it with what we had 2 years ago, when I came into office and the deficit for the first full year was $2 billion. That's what we were looking at. And so we've been able to stabilize the situation in Louisiana, get predictable revenue, have responsible budgets. And by the way, from last year to this year, we reduced the net tax burden on the state of Louisiana by almost $600 million. And so things are doing better. I'm excited about it, and I hear from people all over the state of Louisiana that they are doing better.
Michelle in Shreveport, you're on the air with Governor John Bel Edwards. Hi, Michelle.
Thank you for having me. Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Governor Edwards. My question is about the death penalty. I left, I'm originally from Denham Springs. I left Denham Springs and went in the military and was living out in California. And I was watching the evening news, and it was breaking news out of Baton Rouge. I had walked into the other room to change clothes because I had gotten home from work, and I hear my classmate's voice come across the news pleading for her life. And they said she was executed in Baton Rouge. 22 years we've waited, and her killer sits on death row out at Angola. He's convicted of double homicide. He actually tried to execute 4 people that day, and one of the other classmates of mine was shot in the back.
All right. I presume Michelle is for the death penalty, and that is the law of the state of Louisiana. But it's been, 15 years or so since we have, a state of...
Yeah, I think if you look at it, there have been 2 executions carried out
since 2001.
Since 2002, I believe. Something like that. And Michelle, I'm assuming the question was directed to me as whether I support the death penalty, and certainly when I took the oath of office to support and defend the laws in the Constitution of the United States, it includes all of them. The manner of execution that is prescribed by law is lethal injection, and it's very specific about the manner that that's to be imposed. And the fact of the matter is, it is just not possible for us presently to move forward with the death penalty because we cannot acquire the drugs that are prescribed. And it's not a problem that's unique to Louisiana, and it is a real issue. And there's actually been litigation over this as well. The litigation has been stayed because it's just not something that we can move forward and do. But like every other law in the state of Louisiana, I am committed to it, and we will continue to work through this process. But we are not able, as a matter of just, it's not possible at present to administer the death penalty in accordance with Louisiana law. And that's why I think there was one in the 8 years before I became governor, and I think, like I said, it was just
one
2
in the preceding 8 years.
I think that's right.
So it's been a while. But I remember Buddy Romer saying the first night he was governor, he had to preside over an execution.
Yeah.
He went from his inaugural ball to the mansion to make the call, and he said it was toughest decision he made as governor.
Well, I'm sure that it is, and of course I haven't been faced with that yet because we haven't, as I mentioned, been able to carry out the death penalty in Louisiana as it's prescribed.
James in Longview, Texas. Hi, James. You're on Ask the Governor with Governor John Bel Edwards.
Well, good afternoon, Jim, and good afternoon, Governor Edwards.
James, I went through your hometown or very close to it the other day on my way to Dallas to watch LSU play Miami.
Did you? Very
I
good.
did.
And it's always a pleasure to have you around. I hope you come back again. Anyhow, I'll get right to the point of the question. Anyhow, with the Supreme Court now ruling that states can now collect sales tax on online purchases from out-of-state sellers, I've read where Louisiana might have a little bit of trouble implementing the measure logistically because sales tax can vary. It just may not be a category state by state. They might have like a penny added in some counties of various states. How do you foresee this?
Well, James, first of all, it's a great question, and we believe that we're in good shape in Louisiana. One of the things that we did is we changed the law to define remote dealer the same way South Dakota did in their statute, which was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court in terms of them having out-of-state online retailers collect and remit sales tax. So we're consistent there. We also make it easy because for these out-of-state remote dealers, they don't have to pay different sales tax rates into the state of Louisiana depending upon the zip code of the purchaser. We have a uniform way of them remitting the 9.45% sales tax to Louisiana, and we then send the portion to the local government. And by the way, in Santa Fe, New Mexico, I actually had a conversation with a lawyer who represented South Dakota before the Supreme Court, and he was very familiar with what we had done in Louisiana, and he felt very confident too that we were positioned well in order to take advantage of the ruling. And we also have a task force that's been set up that's being led by the Secretary of Revenue, Kimberly Robinson, and she's got different individuals on there, and we're trying to make sure that as we are able, we can fully take advantage of this. And it's not all about the revenue, and of course there will be additional revenue to the state of Louisiana. It's about achieving fairness in the marketplace so that Louisiana-based bricks and mortar retailers are not at a competitive disadvantage with those who are out of state, who are not making payroll and paying payroll taxes and property taxes in Louisiana. They don't support our local Little League baseball team or anything like that. And we want to restore fairness to the playing field, and that's critically important as well.
877-217-5757 is your Ask the Governor number. Marie in Eunice. Marie, you're on the air with Governor Edwards.
Hey, thanks, Jim. Hello, Governor.
Hi, Marie. Thank you for calling.
Hey, my pleasure. My question is, first of all, congratulations on accomplishing expanded Medicaid for our working Louisianans. I've never lived anywhere in the United States that had so many working people who never had insurance in their life until you got that program through. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
But out here, the newspapers never give any credit for these programs. They only publish commentaries that rip away at them, make excuses for, tearing them down. For example, the most recent editorial claimed that there's $700 million of fraud. And the author more or less suggested that if you clean up that $700 million of fraud, then you could get around to the teacher race. First, are you dealing with the fraud? And second, these are not mutually exclusive. They should be mutually exclusive issues, shouldn't they? I mean,
well, first of all, Marie, thank you very much for the call. There are not $700 million worth of fraud, and by the way, there always is going to be some fraud in programs like this, and not just in Louisiana, but everywhere. And you can rest assured that we're going to do everything that we can to stamp it out, and whether it's by providers or by a beneficiary. So it doesn't matter. We are committed to program integrity. But I believe the Medicaid expansion has been extremely positive for our state. In fact, it was recently reported by the U.S. Census Bureau that the rate of uninsured people in Louisiana today with respect to health insurance is at an all-time low. We know for adults, they were, basically 1 in 4 were uninsured. When I came into office, it's about 1 in 10 today. So that's much, much better. And we are saving state general fund dollars by making that coverage available to individuals. And in fact, the Trump administration, CMS, named our administration here in Louisiana, since I've been governor, as one of the toughest states in the country fighting Medicaid fraud, because we are following best practices. Secondly, my number one priority next year will be to fund an increase in K through 12 education, half of which will go to teacher pay by increasing the per pupil allocation under our funding formula, the minimum foundation program. And then I want to also appropriate additional dollars to put with that so that our teachers get a $1,000 raise next year, which will still leave them about $1,000 short of the Southern Regional average. But I also want to make sure that we have a $500 raise to support workers, whether they're cafeteria workers, janitors, bus drivers. It's been a long time since we did this. We have to do it if we're going to keep highly motivated, professional, great educators in the classroom, which is the most important ingredient to having a good education system. So it's the right thing to do, and it's the number one priority, and we're going to be able to make that happen.
Adele in Gramercy. Hi, Adele. You're on the air with Governor Edwards.
Hi, Governor.
Hi,
First of
Adele.
all, thank you for everything you've done for the state of Louisiana. And I wanted to wish you a belated happy birthday.
Thank you.
My question, I think you just answered it, because I was going to ask you about teacher pay raises. We need our teachers to get a nice pay raise, and I think you just answered my question.
Well, thank you. And the way the funding formula works, it contemplates that half of an increase in the MFP goes to teacher pay, the other half goes to the districts in the form of a block grant. But we haven't done these increases routinely. In fact, I think it's just twice in the last 10 years, and none in the last 4 years have we done that 2.75% increase. And so whereas 10 years ago we were at the Southern Regional average in pay, today we're about $2,200 short. I don't believe that we can make up the entire gap in one fell swoop, but I do believe we can cut it in half. That's the goal going into the next session. I've already met with a number of legislators. I met with School Superintendent John White and members of the Bessie Board. I believe there's a lot of support for this, and that we're going to be able to get it done. And of course, I'm also anticipating that our economy is going to continue to do well, and that we will have the revenue necessary to make this additional investment in K through 12 education, and it's critically important if we're going to have motivated teachers, the best that we can put in these classrooms in order to educate our children. So it's the right thing to do, and I'm looking forward to making it happen.
There is an October 1st deadline related to the historic flood of 2016, and this one affects about 3,000 homeowners. What's going on?
Correct. And by the way, this is statewide, because we ended up with 56 out of our 64 parishes declared major federal disasters because of the March and August floods in 2016. And so initially we asked homeowners who were affected to take a survey. And then we invited individuals who took surveys to complete an application. Well, right now we've got about 3,000 homeowners across the state who took the survey, but haven't yet applied. And applying is necessary if they're going to take advantage of this program. And so I'm encouraging every homeowner out there. And by the way, we're targeting them specifically with telephone numbers, with addresses for mail, texts, emails, but we're also doing public advertising as well. So if you're a homeowner and you took the survey, but you've not yet done the formal application, we really need you to do that. Please go to restore.la.gov, restore.la.gov, or you can call 866-735-2001 to speak to a program representative from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. Do that. Even if you took a Small Business Administration loan and believe that you are ineligible and that you're going to continue to be ineligible, go ahead and do this application because we are working with our congressional delegation to try to change the law, and we're working with the administration to try to get them to change their interpretation of existing law so that we will be able to make these grant funds available to those homeowners who may have taken some a small business administration loan as well. So please take the survey by October the 1st. That is the deadline.
Justin in Baton Rouge. Justin, good afternoon. You're on the air with Governor Edwards.
Good afternoon, Jim. Governor?
Good afternoon, Justin. Thank you for calling.
All right.
Oh, it's no problem, sir. I just wanted to say my daughter goes to school at LSMSA up in Natchitoches, and she's been looking forward to it for years. And the only drawback I ever had was the living situation.
Yeah.
But she enjoys it for what it is, and I just wanted you to say that a bunch of the parents deeply appreciate what you're doing for those guys.
Well, thank you, Justin. And so yesterday I had an opportunity to go to Natchitoches. It was my second visit specifically to the Louisiana School for Math, Science, and Arts. And when I was there last December, I toured the administration building, the classrooms, and ultimately the dormitory where the kids live. And it was Caddo, and I know that there's another one for the male students as well. But when the school came into existence in 1986, they took dormitories that were already not being used by Northwestern State University and spent a little bit of money and fixed them up for the dormitories for this school. And again, that was in 1986. But there are serious issues related to maintenance, the utility costs. But most important for me, there really are some life safety issues that need to be corrected. And so we're going to be able, and the legislature passed it in the capital outlay bill, to build new dormitories over the next couple of years. It'll be, I think, something that's desperately needed for the reasons that I just said. And what we would hate, Justin, is for parents to go there with their kids and decline to allow their kids to attend because of the condition of the dormitories. And that's how bad they really were. So it was a good day for me to be able to go there yesterday and say we're going to continue to invest in our children, our best and brightest. Education is so important, and we want our best and brightest to have every opportunity for success in Louisiana. And I don't think there's a better school. In fact, the Louisiana School in Natchitoches is recognized around the country as offering one of the best public high school educations anywhere. It's the only residential program of its type here in Louisiana. So I just think it was the right thing to do, and it was well overdue. And I appreciate the legislature for including that project in the bill.
Thank you, Justin. 877-217-5757. You're asked the governor number, and we go to New Orleans. John in New Orleans, you're on the air with the governor.
Thank you. Governor.
Yes, sir.
This is John. I have a question about the industrial canal. We're so tired of being flooded here, and this is a very controversial project that the Corps of Engineers doesn't seem to be wanting to do a new environmental impact statement despite all the problems with Katrina and closing the Mr. Go. And so we really think that we should engage with you more because you're a very pivotal person in this and not just see it as another bit of infrastructure, but something that really is going to impact the future of New Orleans.
Well, John, that's going to require, I think, some more time to discuss this issue with you and figure out exactly what your perspective on it is. And so before you get off, I'm going to ask that you give your contact information to Micah. He will get your name and your phone number and then get a little bit more about your question. And it's something that I can discuss with the Department of Transportation and Development Secretary Sean Wilson. But I do have a relationship with the folks at the Corps. It's pretty good, and I'll be happy to call them as well. But I just need to make sure that I know more about the problem or the issue, I guess, from your perspective, so that I can get to work on it.
877-217-5757 is your number. Israel in New Orleans. You're on the air with Governor John Bel Edwards. Hello, Israel.
Hello.
Hi, Israel. Thank you for calling.
Hello, Governor. Thank you for having me on the show. I just had a question. I recently had seen that LSU was granted access to grow medical marijuana in the state of Louisiana. And I just had a question in terms of if legalization of recreational use would be considered in the future, and if so, if that the taxes on medical marijuana and the recreational use would be helpful for.
Right. We've been down this road before, but is the tax money worth having recreational marijuana available in our state?
Well, I am not a proponent of legalizing marijuana for recreational purposes. I did support in the legislature, and I have signed bills as governor to make sure that we have access to medical marijuana in Louisiana, and that's what Israel was mentioning at the beginning. The way the legislation was created, it was authored by, I believe, Fred Mills, a state senator from St. Martin Parish, but it allowed the Southern University Ag Center and the LSU Ag Center to have the right of first refusal to actually grow and then contract out to make some of this happen. And I think both exercised those rights that were granted to them. And it appears that sometime around next spring, medical marijuana will be available in Louisiana. I thought that was important because we have a number of medical conditions for which doctors would like to prescribe or recommend marijuana. They weren't able to do that, and you had individuals suffering here in Louisiana being told by their doctors, and this is especially sad when it involves a young child, perhaps with a seizure disorder. Yeah, we've tried everything else. The only thing left is medical marijuana, but if you want to take advantage of that, you got to move. You got to move out of state, and so we're going to move forward with that. The recreational side, I'm just not comfortable, and I want to make sure that we fully appreciate the experience of other states that have done this, the benefits and the adverse consequences as well. And it's not all about the revenue. There are other issues that we have to look at, and so I think it would be prudent to see what happens in Colorado and elsewhere where they legalize medical marijuana, because I'm just not a proponent of legalizing recreational marijuana here in Louisiana.
WC in Baton Rouge. WC, you're on the air with Governor Edwards.
Hey, Governor, how you doing today? How y'all doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. How are you?
I just want to touch on the traffic here a little bit. I know you've been working on it for a while. For instance, I live back here in Riverbend off of Bright Side.
Yes, sir.
And I said, now when I leave here going south, I'm going east. The first traffic light we'll get to when I cross the railroad leaving Nicholson Drive. Now you got about 40 lights in there. When that traffic light changed right there at Nicholson, college run out over there at Jefferson, why wouldn't they be able to when that light changed at Nicholson there, everything from there to Jefferson Highway changed green at the same time? Is that
all right? That's a very local issue, but traffic is a big topic of discussion everywhere in our state, particularly in Baton Rouge.
It is a local issue, WC, but before you get off, give your information to Micah. I'm not sure, based on the description you gave, whether you're talking about a state road or a local road, but obviously synchronizing traffic lights is important to traffic flow. And it does help to ease with congestion, and there might be something that we can do there, or at least recommend to you that you contact someone with East Baton Rouge if that's what's going to be required. But we do have too many vehicles on our transportation infrastructure these days. In some places, we do have capacity issues, and the very least that we can do, it seems to me, is where it's appropriate and possible, is synchronize lights so that traffic flows better, and it's not where you just go one block at a time before you have to stop.
As stated, I would suspect that transportation will be one of the top 2 or 3 issues in the governor's election next year.
I don't think there's any doubt. Look, we have in Louisiana issues around transportation infrastructure just like you have elsewhere. We've done an awful lot. For example, one of the first things I did in the first year is I cut the state police out of the Transportation Trust Fund. They were scheduled to get $72 million the first year that I was governor. Instead, they didn't get any of that, and that money stayed in the Department of Transportation. Critically important. But But everybody knows we have capacity issues in certain parts of the state. Elsewhere, we have preservation and maintenance issues. We've got a number of bridges around the state that were actually built during the Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration. And the gas tax is the third oldest gas tax in the country. It's 16 cents. It's 30 years old, and it's because of inflation, the purchasing power of that 16 cents. Today, it gets you 7.5 cents. And one of those gets spent to retire debt that's associated with the Times program, so it's not even available for today's needs. And so, quite frankly, it is a huge challenge. Now, it doesn't mean we can't do better, and we are doing better. We're finding new and more creative ways to deliver projects. We are very aggressive about applying for grants from the federal government. We just got $80 million that other states couldn't use, and we brought that back to Louisiana. But this is going to be a big issue for us going forward.
Amy in St. Francisville. Hello, Amy. You're on the air with the governor.
Hi, Governor. My question is actually about restraining orders, domestic violence restraining orders.
Okay.
And my situation is I have a son who has a girlfriend, and she filed a restraining order on him. Then she still comes to the house. And so whenever she got tired of seeing him, she called the police and had him arrested.
All right. That's a tough question, but you want to.
It is. And Amy, I hate that you're going through that. I would just encourage you to make sure that you are and your son are communicating with local law enforcement so that whatever happens, it won't be the first time you told your side of the story later on. And, you know, these are very difficult situations, and there's always more than one side to the story. So I encourage everybody to document what happens and when, and make sure that you're communicating that ahead of time to the best of your ability. But beyond that, I'm just not sure that there's anything that I can do for you. I would encourage you, if you've got a really specific issue with the way the law is set up, for example, around restraining orders, that you think we might want to entertain changing, that you give your information and that specific request to Micah, and we will take a look at it and get back with you.
Jason in New Orleans. Hello, Jason. You're on the air with the governor.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Jason.
Hey, it's Jason Coleman out of New Orleans. I had a quick question regarding dyslexia and maybe including it with the IEP as far as public education goes. Currently, our state doesn't actually give funding for the programs to help those students with dyslexia, which is about 10% of the population.
Well, Jason, that sounds like a reasonable thing to do, and so I will look into that. And you know, I'm one of those parents who've had a child with an individual education plan, an IEP, as you mentioned, and I know how much good it did for my child, who is now a counselor herself in the school system, and she's doing extremely well. Because those teachers worked with her and made certain accommodations early on in elementary school. She outgrew that by the time that she was in high school. And I'll tell you who else has talked to me about dyslexia, especially as it relates to what's available in education, public education in Louisiana, is Senator Bill Cassidy. This is something that's really important to him and to Mrs. Cassidy. And so this is not the first time that I've had someone approach me about dyslexia, but we will take a look at that and see if it's something that we can integrate into the IEP process and potentially a different approach as it relates to our school system.
David in New Orleans. Hello, David. You're on the air with the governor.
Oh, hello, Governor.
Hi, David.
Thank you for taking my call. I hope you get reelected to keep serving Louisiana. I heard a rumor that America Magazine came to Baton Rouge to talk to a Democratic Catholic governor. I don't know if you want to share any thoughts or with the readers about what your impression was, and I think you're going to be featured in one of their magazines in the fall.
David, I did. I sat for an interview with a priest who came out of Washington, D.C. He's the editor of America Magazine, and he came to the office, and we spent a long time talking, and and just asking me about my faith and the people of Louisiana and some of the things that we're doing policy-wise and so forth. I haven't seen the article yet, but it should be coming out soon, and I'm looking forward to it. And at least I think I'm looking forward to it. But I believe it'll be positive. But I really do appreciate your call, and I thought you were going to talk about American Airlines, not American Magazine, because actually American Airlines right now, that magazine in the seat pocket ahead of you, in front of you, it has an extensive layout about the state of Louisiana, and it was something that they interviewed me for as well. So for anybody out there who's going to be flying American this month, you'll be treated to a big spread about Louisiana and the very unique history and the culture that we have here in Louisiana that draws so many tourists and makes it such a quality place to live and work.
In this era of claims of fake news, you have been largely accessible to media of all kinds. Well, what's your position on the role of the media in a society such as ours?
Well, look, it's incredibly important. And you have different media outlets that of different kinds, and every kind has those that have a conservative bent and those that have a liberal bent, and some that make every effort to shoot straight down the middle. But they're all important, and certainly the framers of our Constitution enshrined it into the very First Amendment for a reason, because it is important to us as we move forward to be informed. And to know the facts, and the freedom of the press exists to serve the governed, not the governor, and that's the difference. And so I don't think it's proper for those who are holding elective office to just continuously berate the media when there's coverage out there with which they disagree. We're not well. And by the way. There is no public official that I know of, and I'm certainly not one who doesn't take exception on occasion, at least to what they read or hear about in the media. But it plays a very important role, and I would hope that the American people continue to support the First Amendment up to the Bill of Rights because it's critical as we move forward that they remain informed and the press remain free.
Kyle in Covington. Hello, Kyle. You're on the air with the governor.
Hi, Governor. This is Kyle from Covington. How are you doing today?
Kyle, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good. I'm calling in regards to the recent death of Baton Rouge City Councilman Mr. Ambrosio.
Yeah.
He was struck and killed in St. Francisville while riding his bicycle several weeks ago. And as a consequence, it seems that the parish of St. Francisville is now trying to restrict cycling in the region, whether it's a tourist or a local or somebody using that area for transit. And I wanted to get your comments on what can be done to follow up with regards to that parish's order.
All right.
Well, thank you. Obviously, we do believe in local governance, and so they do have a right to change the rules. What we can do as a state, and what I think we should try to do as locals as well, when we build roads, and certainly when we improve them, we need to try to make them bicycle friendly. And where possible, we need to add shoulders. That's for the safety of the motoring public, but also critically important if we're going to have cyclists. And by the way, it's a huge thing in society today to go out and ride your bikes and do it for long distances, and you need a place where you can do that. One of the things that I worked on as a state representative, for example, was being able to designate as many of the highways in my district between Tangipahoa, St. Helena, East and West Feliciana as bicycle friendly. And what I found out is you typically had to have a shoulder on the road for that to happen. So we can continue to work toward that. We have in the legislature in Louisiana over the last several years passed bills that instruct motorists to make sure that they operate safely as it relates to cyclists, and that they actually share the road and pull over a certain number of feet when they're going to pass them and so forth. But I think you're always going to have, and this is sad, drivers who are inattentive and accidents. But this one with Mr. Amoroso was extremely tragic, very, very sad. And we need to do what we can to make sure that cyclists are protected and that they are safe. And we can do that by designating certain roadways as bicycle friendly and putting the motorists on those roadways on notice that they need to share that with those cyclists so that everyone can get home when they're done traveling the road.
And we'll be unable to get to a few callers who are waiting, and so we'll give you another shot on October 17th, and I hope you're first in line. But before we go, Governor, we have about a minute. What are your thoughts about the tariffs and how they're affecting Louisiana?
Well, we don't know how they're affecting Louisiana, but we know that from a report from Bloomberg that Louisiana, of all 50 states, is perhaps positioned to suffer the most from a protracted trade war with a series of tariffs and retaliatory tariffs because of the importance of the ports here with importing and exporting, but also the increase in the cost of steel because of tariffs that will increase the cost, for example, to construct chemical and petrochemical facilities. We saw today where China put a 10% tariff on the importation of LNG, which is, we have other countries out there that are creating sufficient demand. I don't know that there's a real problem, acute problem in the near term with that, but potentially that's going to impact us as well. And then, of course, agriculture is very important here. And so every time we lose money in terms of what a crop will bring in, that's going to be adverse to our farmers. So I've encouraged the president in a letter that I sent him, I think it was July the 11th, to please do everything he could to bring all of these negotiations to a speedy and successful conclusion so that the harm that was specifically mentioned in that Bloomberg report doesn't actually happen here in Louisiana.
Thank you, Governor John Bel Edwards. Back next month, October 17th. Until then, thank you for listening and stay tuned.